are celebrating. Okay, so we are connected, and let me see. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We thank you all for being here today. Today we are blessed to have Her Grace Mother VRAJALILA Devi, who will be speaking to us from the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. And so, well, Mother VRAJALILA is not new to anybody here. If Mother VRAJALILA is new to you, it means you are an alien. You're coming from a different planet. So, Mother Vraj, thank you for being here as always, and we really appreciate your motherly love. So we'll put the verse on the screen, and you may begin.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I appreciate it so much.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so today we're reading from SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, Canto 1, Chapter 18, Text 36. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So text 36. It utvaro shatam raksho Vayasyan Rishibalakaha Vishikapa Upashprishtia Vajram Vishasharjaha. Srila Prabhupada's translation, and then I'll go back to the word for word. Translation. The son of the Rishi, his eyes hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kosula. So I'm sorry, Kosika, while speaking to his playmates, and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. So I'm just going to go back to the synonyms just so we can get this translation. Iti, thus, uktva, saying, Rosha Tamra Akshaha, with red hot eyes due to being angry, Via Vasyan, unto the playmates, Rishi Balakaha, the son of a Rishi, Kosiki, the river Kosika, Apaha, water, Upas Prishya, by touching, Ba, words, Rajram, thunderbolt, Visha Sarja, through, Ha, in the past. Okay, we're going to go back now to the what Srila Prabhupada purport. So that was the synonyms for that translation. And this is a short, but however, very powerful purport. The circumstances under Maharaj Parikshit was cursed or simply childish, as it appears from this verse. Shringi was showing his impotency amongst his playmates, who were innocent. Any sane man would have prevented him from doing such great harm to all human society by killing a king like Maharaj Parikshit, just to make a show of acquired Brahminical power. The inexperienced son of a Brahmana committed a great mistake. Om Agana Timirandasya Gana Gana Shalakaya Chakshura Amalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvena Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavari Pachtatyade Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shitatmane Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Bhakti Tiyata Tinamine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasinjubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I read Srila Prabhupada's translation again. The son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Osika while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. Hari Hari, Hari Bol. Right. So I've been listening to some of the classes and many of the devotees have established that so much of this pastime was arranged by the Lord, right? So we know that this pastime it's a very extraordinary pastime because it's about one of the Lord's devotees, and the Lord was ready to bring Parikshit Maharaj back to the spiritual world. So we're going to talk about this personality that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shringi, who, is a personality that's here to teach us many, many lessons, especially this lesson of how anger can overtake us. So I was thinking of this author when I read this verse, a very famous author, and she made a statement that many people quote her. The statement says, when you know better, you do better. When you know better, you do better. However, we see in Srimad Bhagavatam that we can know better, however, still not do better, right? So it's quite interesting when I think of this quote, because many people really believe this quote, and it is a quote that really can help a person to understand, hey, once you start learning something, once you start getting knowledge about something, then you do better about it. What most people don't know, most people, because they don't have absolute knowledge, right? They don't have knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam. They don't have knowledge of Chaitanya Charitamrita. They don't have knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. What people don't know is that the reason this statement is not always true is because people don't understand Krishna's external energy. Most people don't understand how the Lord external energy can impact people in the world. They don't have an understanding about the verse in Bhagavad Gita, which I'm going to ask Sahadev to pull up. This is a very basic, simple verse. It's in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 223, I believe. Saha, if you can pull that up. Okay, I don't know. Sahadev, I was wondering what's going on.
Yeah, 223.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so most people don't have this, the knowledge of the 263. Sorry.
All right.
I want to look at this verse. I wanted to look at this verse. And this is a basic verse. We all know this verse pretty much. However, I don't know how many of us think about this verse often. So Krishna is explaining to Arjuna here, from anger, Krodha, when this anger takes place, he explains that then complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Now, when we look at this verse, I think the verse before this one, if you go to maybe 262, let's see if that's the verse one before that one. Yeah. So this 262, really important verse for us to understand this these lessons that Shringa is teaching us. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. So Shingi, in the purport, in the synonym translation, he's explained to have had red hot eyes due to being angry. So this anger came to Shingi because he developed attachment to something, right? While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. So, and from such attachment, lust develops. So oftentimes when we think of lust, we think, sex, or we think somebody is doing something that's inappropriate, which in most cases it is. However, lust expands into all of the things that we do when we're dealing with Krishna's external energy. Lust comes from wanting something that, maybe we cannot have. Lust comes from just being in the world, but not understanding, our position in the world as servants. Lust comes from pride. There's so many ways that lust develops. So in the case of Sringi, and I don't want to go back over what the devotees have so eloquently, spoken the last few classes that I listened to. So many of the devotees, this topic of Maharaj Parikshit being cursed is so important. And many of the devotees, they've put so much time into really, like I said, eloquently speaking about this topic. So I won't review any of the things, so much of what they've said, just a few points to remind us that this desire to think that we're the controllers, that desire we see was exemplified by this young boy, Sringi, because when Sringi cursed Maharaj Parikshit, Prabhupada explains here that he was playing with his friends, right? He's playing with his friends, and then he heard that what happened, with his father and the king, his Shamaka Rishi, his father, the Brahmana. He heard, and he, being very powerful, because he's a Brahmin, and he's a very powerful young man. So he decides, okay, these Chachas like Parikshit Maharaj, they're thinking that they're so great. They're thinking that, they rule the world. And therefore, because Krishna had just left, as we know, in some of the other chapters, Krishna left to go to Dwarka. And so he was thinking, no, I'm sorry, Krishna had left the planet at that time. This wasn't when he's leaving for Dwarka. He's already left. And so he's thinking, because Krishna has left, he's totally left. Now, these Chachas are thinking that they're so great. They're thinking they're so wonderful. And so he then decides that he's going to, just make a decision based on his power, based on the power that he has as a Brahmana, because as we know, in the Varna system, the Brahmanas are supposed to be the most powerful, right? So now he's thinking, okay, I will show these Chachas. I will show them who's powerful, who's the most powerful. And so he makes this mistake, right? And Prabhupada explains here that he's also showing off. He's young, and he's showing off with his friends, his power. So he has this pride, this ego. And with this ego, he's going to let his, friends see that, he won't accept this, this horrific act of what he thinks that Maharaj Parikshit did. Now, what's beautiful about the story, and I'll kind of keep going back to this, is Prabhupada keeps sharing with us that this pastime happened because Krishna wanted Maharaj Parikshit back, right? He wanted him to come back to the spiritual world. And so this whole pastime is arranged. So we want to see Sringi as someone that's really important. He's an important character in the Srimad Bhagavatam because he teaches us, although it's kind of a way that is not really not understood always. However, he teaches us this affection that he had for his father, right? So he had this affection and this desire to protect his father. He did something that was inappropriate. He acted inappropriately. At the same time, we see that this relationship between father and son is something that was very powerful when we look at Shringi and see what he did. Very, very powerful. So although Prabhupada explains in this purport, he says that any sane person would have prevented him from doing this great harm because it affected the whole of human society. Now, this is important for us that Shringi did the wrong thing and he did it in the wrong way. Although he had intentions to protect his father, he did it in totally the wrong way. And so this impacted the whole of society. And so we want to kind of explore a little bit about this, how this impacted everyone. So let's look at this anger. Anger is there in all of us. It's a part of Krishna's external energy. It's a part of the modes of material nature. And being conditioned souls, most of us are affected at some time or another with anger. So many times people don't even understand their anger. I have a friend that works in a hospital, like our dear Sahadev, and he was sharing a pastime with me. He takes care of, when he goes to the hospital, he takes care of young children that, were put in there in that hospital because they did something, that created disturbance to other people. So this young kid, he had so much anger in him that when that anger overtook him, he kicked a room. He kicked in this room where there were other children because he got so upset. And when he kicked in this room, it was so hard that he broke his leg and he ended up in the hospital. And so my friend was going to the hospital, working with him. So my friend shared that when he got it, when he came into the hospital, the young boy, he was playing with a toy. And somehow or other, the toy wasn't doing what he wanted the toy to do. So, he just threw the toy on the ground, right? And my friend is walking into his room and he's thinking, oh, okay, he's having an outburst, of anger. And so my friend is a devotee. And so he's trying to understand now how he's going to get this boy a little calm. And so of course, he knows he can't just tell him, okay, you're angry. You can't just quote Bhagavatam. You can't just quote Bhagavad Gita. So he has to work with this child, right? So one of the things that we want to understand is that psychologically, anger has a direct effect on our nervous system, psychologically. Because what happens is when that desire for whatever it is that we're wanting, whatever that might be, that creates toxins in the body. And those toxins, they actually affect us during that time when we become angry. So that's what happened to Shringi. Shringi became overcome by this anger of what happened. And at the same time, he's filled with pride. So he's showing his powers, and he's very powerful. And he's affected by these toxins that are there in his body. So my friend was saying, okay, psychologically, he's there as a psychiatrist to help this young child. So he starts saying, I see you're having a little, you're having a little problem here. Something like that. Oh, how are you? What are you? And the child just takes the sheet and pulls it over his head. That means he's not going to talk. He doesn't want to talk, right? Pulls it over his head. So he's a psychologist. He has to be there as he's talking to him. So he continues speaking to this child. And just the child is not responding. And then he says to the child, oh, I brought you some cookies. And then under the sheet, the child says, what kind of cookies? And so then he tells the child, I brought you peanut butter cookies. So then the child reaches his hand out of the sheet, takes the cookie, starts eating the cookie under the sheet. And then he, after some time, start pulling the sheet down, and then they can start talking, right? So what my friend explained to me about anger, when anger overtakes someone, they lose control, absolutely lose control. They psychologically, their brain is not really functioning in the same way as someone that is not filled with all these toxins of anger, right? So psychologically, anger affects our nervous system. Emotionally, these anger outbursts, they come because as we know, we have some attachment to something. There's something Krishna says right in that verse. Lust develops. When lust is there, when we have lust for something, whatever it might be. In the case of Sringi, his lust was for respect, right? We may not think of this as respect as a form of lust. It is. And we see that, throughout history. We see that wars are created because of this desire for respect. And so emotionally, because we're all in relationships with each other, and because we all affect each other, and we all trigger each other in different ways, we can understand that, and because we're emotional beings, we're creatures of emotion. So naturally, it's important to know what it is that can trigger our anger. This is so key for people in Kali Yuga, because as we understand from this verse, and we know from the pastime, I'll keep going back to the fact that this pastime was happening, arranged by Krishna. So all of this is again to just help us to understand, these different lessons that Maharaj Parikshit was used to help to teach. And Sringi is a part of this play, right? He's a part of this drama. So emotionally, Sringi expressed all this emotion of anger, of disturbance. And this emotion that he expressed, he did not think, he wasn't able to use his intelligence. And we know that the Brahmanas are supposed to be the most intelligent according to Vedic culture. So as far as culture was concerned, as far as what the powers that he had as a Brahmana, he totally lost it. His intelligence was lost because he allowed his emotions to overtake his consciousness, to overtake his understanding, his better knowledge. So going back to that statement, when we know better, we do better. No, when we know better, even with the knowledge, when we know better, even with knowledge, we can be overcome by lust. We can be overcome by these different desires to control, these different desires, profit, adoration, and distinction, these different desires that are a product of the three modes of material nature that condition souls face. And even though Sringi was a Brahmana, he's still in the material world. We know the story of Lord Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. We remember we just celebrated his disappearance day. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, one of the things that he did in terms of defeating, these sahajas and defeating these persons that thought that they were so very elevated. So we know that he was invited to speak, in an assembly of Brahmanas. And we know that the caste system is something that Bhaktisiddhanta spent a lot of his life making sure that would dissolve. And so when he went to speak, the Brahmanas, he was to defeat these Brahmanas, because the Brahmanas are their culture and their understanding, which is also the Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding, that the Brahmanas are the highest in terms of the varnas, in terms of the varnas and ashrams, in terms of the system that is set up by Krishna. And so he went to this assembly. He actually went to represent his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there we learned that he just agreed with these Brahmanas. He said, yes, Brahmanas are, they're definitely the higher order of society because they have the spiritual knowledge. However, after he agreed with them and, kind of, as we say in regular material life, just kind of pampered their egos, then he shared with them about Vaishnavism and what it is about Vaishnavism that is greater than being a Brahmana. And so he explained Bhaktisiddhanta to these caste Brahmanas at the time that the whole premise, their whole understanding of this caste system is just not, it was totally inappropriate. And so he shared Vaishnavism is higher than being a Brahmana. Why? Because Vaishnavas, they have the understanding, the knowledge of going back to Goloka Vrindavan. They're directly developing a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not just based on rituals. It's not just based on just understanding the Vedas, even though that's very important. And so Shringi lost this. One thing Bhaktisiddhanta said is that Brahmins, they're definitely in the mode of goodness. Doesn't make them transcendental. So Shringi is teaching us that he wasn't transcendental. He was definitely acting in the mode of passion and ignorance. And so this is a beautiful example for us to understand that even though a person may be in the mode of goodness and they may appear to have really good qualities, it doesn't make them transcendental. And therefore, they can still be subjected to the modes of material nature. So also, when we look at it socially, right? When we look at what anger does socially, it increases, just crime everywhere. It makes the family less exemplary, and we see that because when families, we can see that this today in our social life. You see that families. One of the reasons that we have so much divorces and separation of families in our social order today is because usually the parents are triggered by some form of anger for something they want that the other person is not able to give, or the other person don't want to give. Maybe not able to, don't want to listen to, don't want to accept. It's always about something that one person wants that the other person is either refusing to give or not able to give. So this anger creates disturbance in our social system. We see that, if you open the news today, anything that you see today, and anything, behind it, of course, is these two phenomenon, lust and anger. lust and anger. Lust, I want this, I'm not getting it. I get angry, therefore I do X, Y, and Z. We see this everywhere. And of course, there's millions of dollars that's invested when we have these disturbances in the world, in families, in the world. We see in families, simply because of lust and anger. We see that families in America, for example, when a husband and wife break, the relationship is finished, usually the husband has to pay. Sometimes the wives have to, but in many cases, the husband has to pay so much money. When there's destruction in cities because of anger, there's so much money that's invested, to try to rebuild. When there's wars like we're experiencing now in Ukraine and Russia, there's so much money invested to buy weapons, so much money invested just to kill. So anger affects so much, within our social system, within our psychological system, within our emotional system. Internationally, as we know, anger is a big, it creates, as we're sharing this, it creates so much wars. And so then I wanted us to look at this, because this example of Shingi, we're hearing it from Srila Prabhupada, that any sane person would have prevented Shingi from doing this. Because what Shingi did, what this decision that Shingi made, was this decision influence how Kali is affecting us in the world today. And we know we're only in a short period of Kali right now. Well, there's two schools of thought. However, one school of thought is that we're right in the midst of Kali, and Kali is still expanding, his potencies all over. And we see it certainly here on this planet. And we also know that that Kali, it was understood that Shingi was being used by Kali to now start the effects that are happening in the world. Some of these things that we're talking about right now. He started the effects of how people are affected psychologically, how they're affected emotionally, how they're affected internationally. So this anger is something that is important for us as devotees to really understand. It's important to really explore, like, what kind of lust am I still dealing with in this material world? How am I affected by this lust? What are some of the triggers of this lust that can bring me to a place of being angry? Yeah. And all of us have this. So this tendency to go to either the mode of ignorance or the mode of passion, or even in the mode of goodness, where we see Shingi is a perfect example of that. We can have this anger that can create so much disturbance in the world. And so what are the symptoms of some of this anger? What are the symptoms of anger? We withdraw emotionally. When Shingi went to, and again, this is going to be discussed by other speakers, but when Shingi went back to his father and realized he had made a mistake, he was sorry, he was repentful. And so oftentimes, even in relationships, because this anger is born from relationships. So when there's relationships, when a person gets angry, after they express that anger, after those toxins overtake their consciousness and whatever behavior they may have, we see that after that, they can withdraw emotionally. We see that there's an anxiousness that can be there. These are some of the symptoms, right? A person after being angry, or even during that period of being of experiencing anger, they're anxious about everything. Or sometimes we see people just become very silent. They don't talk. They don't talk to anyone. And and sometimes people are like that. However, internally, they're experiencing this anger. They just don't know how to express it. And so you see that some of the ways that people express anger is to shout, is to blame, is to threaten other people, even physically harming other people, hurting, other people. Just, yeah, so many ways that we express this anger. So how did Shringi, because he was a powerful Brahmana, how did he express his anger? He cursed Maharaj Pariksit because he had that power to be able to do that. And Prabhupada says here that because of his inexperience, he's an inexperienced, immature young person. And so he used that power in that moment of anger. He used that power to create such destruction that would affect the entire world, not just for a few years, the entire world for a whole period of Kali. So this is amazing about Shringi. Shringi is not to be taken lightly. He's not. He's a person that really teaches us, how to really be internal, and how to understand within ourselves, how anger might affect us, and what are some of the ways that we can get triggered with anger, and how will that anger impact other people. So according to Bhagavatam, the origin of anger, the beginning of anger, is Prabhupada explains, it's the principal anartha, and the origin of how things unfold. If we look in Bhagavatam, every chapter, every canto, within every canto, you can find something about anger. Every single canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, whether I was just thinking, my thoughts just went to Lord Nrsimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj, or just there's so many amazing pastimes about the origins of anger in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and how anger manifests in these different relationships, right? So it's also important, Bhagavatam explains to us, that there's an anger born of the modes of material nature, born of the external energy of Krishna. And there's also anger that is used in service to the Lord. So anger within itself, when we look at the word anger and we look at the emotion anger within itself can be directed in ways to serve Krishna, or in ways to continue the message or the lesson of Shringi, right, in material energy. So, for example, when we look at the four Kumaras, when they weren't led into the spiritual world by Jai and Vijay, they were angry and they were liberated, right? They were liberated souls. They were angry. Why were they angry? Because they wanted to enter into Vaikuntha. They wanted, to be able to see. It was still a desire, but it was a spiritual desire to see and be with the Lord. That anger is the impact of that anger in lessons that are teaching us is different than the anger that we're learning from Shringi. Shringi's anger was basically something that for himself, right? Something that anger, that emotion manifested because that respect that he wanted for himself and his father he thought wasn't there. However, in the example of the four Kumaras, their anger was because they wanted to go and visit Lord Vishnu. They wanted to get into the Vaikuntha planet. They wanted to go to see Lord Vishnu. And then Lord Vishnu had to apologize, right, on his two gatekeepers. So this is how we understand, that anger is not itself bad. Anger is pointing towards a direction. how we deal with our anger, that's what's important. That's important. So there's a statement I heard recently that, and I'm just looking here on some of my notes about how we can look at anger, that, and we've talked about this, you know, some of the steps, like those steps that we can understand anger. So firstly, it's important to look at our enjoyment, at the enjoyment principle. Yeah, how much do we still want to enjoy material energy? That's something to always check in with ourselves. How much am I always wanting to satisfy my own desires? That where Krishna is not in the center. And that's something we can easily, you know, explore within ourselves. There's a verse says, while contemplating the objects, well, we talked about that verse. I'm sorry, I'm repeating this verse because I wrote some of these things down. The other thing that we see from this lesson from Shringi is having an egotistic attitude. So yeah, we definitely in this material world, one of the binding factors to Krishna's external energy for most of us is our egos. And our egos gets us in trouble most of the time, right? Most of the time. In Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities, and that they're actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we're thinking we're doing something. We're thinking this is being done by me. And that's the message of the ego. That's how the ego affects us, because we think we're great. We think we do something. Yeah, that was the mood of Shringi. He had that power. So he thought Krishna isn't here now, and so I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure that these Kshatriyas learn. And so because of this, because of that, because of having those thoughts, then that's what he did. He cursed Maharaj Parikshit. So we often are like that also, where we think somebody has done something that we don't appreciate. And so therefore we are going to have a behavior that we're going to be the ones to teach them a lesson. From us, they're going to learn. And so the ego then kicks in, and then we become the Dharma police. And when we become the Dharma police for others, then we often take that mood of Shringi, thinking, okay, Krishna, I'm going to do it for Krishna. I'm going to be the one to do it on behalf of Krishna. And yeah, you know, it's sometimes that it can be that can be done in a way where we're thinking we're doing it for Krishna, but we may not be doing it for Krishna. We may be doing it just as Shringi was doing it for, you know, part of why he was doing it was to show to his friends, that he has power. Sometimes we're also doing whatever we do to really show others that, yes, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to accept this. You know, I have the power that I can change you. I can change the way you think. And we forget that normally people think the way they think. And sometimes it's wonderful if we can offer some suggestion. However, to not be attached to the results of how a person might behave. We see that example in Parikshit Maharaj, right? He was like, okay, all right, I'm cursed. Haribol, let me take this curse and go on. So these examples are just so key. The other way that we get affected is we have frustrated attitudes. Oftentimes we're frustrated, you know, in relationships with people. We get frustrated by how they deal with us. what they say to us, how they make us feel, how they make us think, right? So because we have this frustrated attitude and we don't get what we want, then the result is anger. Krishna says, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the modes of material nature and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. That's Bhagavad Gita, right? That's in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this lesson keeps repeating itself. Krishna repeats this lesson about anger continuously in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavatam, even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's obviously something that we are to look at, something we are to constantly be aware that this emotion is such a powerful emotion. It's such a powerful emotion. And this emotion that comes, we often don't even understand what triggers the emotion. You know, sometimes we're aware, but not always. So it's really important as we are aspiring devotees to be able to learn more about ourselves, right? The lessons begin within. So as we understand ourselves better, then we start understanding more how to see when something is going to come that will trigger our anger, trigger our frustration, trigger our disturbance. And when we become aware of that, then we are able to be like a step ahead, right? We're able to like, oh, here comes this anger. What is it showing me? What is it here to teach me? Please let me just stop for a minute, breathe, take some breaths. Okay, do I want to say that? Do I want to make somebody else uncomfortable? What is my intention? Check in with ourselves. We got to know ourselves a little bit to be able to do that. So anger can be controlled. Anger can be controlled from learning more about ourselves and being patient with ourselves, knowing that this anger affects everyone. It affects everyone. It affects even devotees that have the most knowledge, the Brahmanas, right? It affects them. So yeah, the most knowledge in terms of the mode of goodness, not the most knowledge in terms of understanding our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and that Krishna is the arranger, the controller, everything. We often forget, you know, when people do things that we don't appreciate, things are arranged. Everything is arranged. And some things are not so nice. Parikshit Prabhupada says somebody in this, that a sane man, a person with good intelligence would have not accepted what Shringi did. Shringi actually arranged for Maharaj Parikshit to die. I mean, we have so many things in this world today that people are doing, right? Even in our devoted community. So this anger is something that we constantly need to be aware of. And they're in the material world. I mean, there is big businesses today that are involved in anger management. You know, I mean, I'm sure all of you are aware. You know, you can go now to clinics for anger management because it's such a phenomenon in the world today. People now are becoming so angry with everything, so angry. So yeah, it's something that we need to look at. And there's something I wanted to share that I thought was really, I heard this yesterday from a devotee, and it was so wonderful to hear this. Let's see if I can find it. I tried to write it down, so I said, let me share this with the devotees tomorrow. Okay, so I'm not seeing it, but anyway, it says something like, okay, I'm not saying. Anyway, there is a tool that I also know that we can use to help us with dealing with anger. And that tool is to be able to understand more about ourselves. As I explained, we got to understand ourselves. And it's important to understand, like, what is it that we actually want, you know, when we become angry. What is it that we want somebody else to do, or something that we're not getting, or how's my lust manifesting? And once we are able to do that, then we are able to understand within ourselves, oh, I'm hurt because, or I'm upset because, or, this thing is not somehow it's affecting me in a way that is not pleasant. It's uncomfortable. And so it's bringing up anger, and learning how to dialogue first with ourselves about that, and then dialoguing with somebody else, whoever may have been the person that was the trigger person. Like, be able to learn how to dialogue with another person about the fact that, yeah, this is making me, angry. And this emotion, I don't want to feed this emotion. So let's talk about this. Let's understand this, and try to do that in a way where it can benefit everyone, where it can make that person learn something about you, and you can learn something about that person. So what this requires in order to address anger is to be vulnerable. One has to be vulnerable. One has to become vulnerable to be able to understand, everything is arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by the Lord. I am an insignificant person. With all humility, I would really like to understand what is going on for that other person, why they may have done X, Y, or Z. What is it that affected them so much? How did this lust affect them so much that their behavior could impact, me in a way that it might have impacted me? Because at the end of the day, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj tells us, he teaches us, if we read his Spiritual Warrior 4, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj spends a lot of time helping us to remember, to understand how anger can impact us, how anger can affect us. So he spent that time because he understood that in our devotee community, sometimes, we behave externally, superficially with others, and we may be having deep anger within ourselves, and we're not able to express that. And so it comes out in different ways in our behavior in our devotee community. And so he took the time to help us to understand this phenomenon of anger, and how this pastime, which, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, right? This is the beginning of Kali Yuga. Look at it today. Look at how anger is affecting us today, all over the world. And importantly, most importantly, look at how it affects us internally. Be present to ourselves, because we're, as he explains, we're a micro part of the bigger whole of what's going on in the society today. So whatever anger we might be having, whether it's subtle anger inside that we're not able to express, or whether we do express our anger in our words, however we do this, it's important to understand that also affects the whole planet. So let us become more conscious to, as much as possible, if we are to express this anger emotion, express it as in a way of wanting to serve Krishna more, trying to see Krishna, trying to be more aligned with wanting to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If the anger is for the devotees, protect the devotees. If the anger is to preserve the Vedic culture as we understand it, then that's an anger that could be useful. However, most of the time when we express anger, we are expressing anger through the modes of material nature in many cases. So let's just be aware of that. So I'm going to stop there, because this is, I think I'd like to have more discussion about this, given that this is a topic that's relevant, I believe, to everyone. Sahadev?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mother. I was preparing some questions in my mind as you were talking, but somehow you answered the questions before I even asked them. And the reason you answered them before I asked is because you addressed this emotion called anger in its very broader sense. So it's not, oftentimes when, like you said, when we talk of anger, it oftentimes comes with a very negative connotation.
Yeah.
You were explaining that it also has its own positive side. When in case in 91, ISKCON had a very big festival in Ghana because Gurudev had visited. And the host, who was very popular at that time, when he was addressing Gurudev, he addressed him as a man with no anger. He said, actually, he addresses, this is the leader of the Hare Krishna movement, Swami Krishnapad. He is a saintly person. He has no anger in him. So that's what I understood. I understood Bhakti Maharaj to be. And then about 2 years later, I saw Gurudev's anger, my goodness. And I was thinking to myself, what did this guy tell me? Gurudev was so angry, his whole body was shaking. But it was for a good reason, just like in the case of Hanuman. Hanuman also used his anger to rescue Mother Sita. But oftentimes, because we are conditioned souls, when we do display anger, it's almost always destructive. So thank you for expanding on anger, and we hope and pray that even though we're struggling, when we do get angry, we can use it in a proper way. So dear devotees, if anyone has a question, comment, please, you may do so. Well, Mother, if I may put the verse on the screen again, because Srila Prabhupada was saying in the purport that any sane man would have prevented him, that is Shringi, from doing such great harm to all human society. And Srila Prabhupada is speaking this way because we understand that Shringi was a child and he was playing with his childhood friends. And so they were all kids. And so based on what his fellow kids told him, he acted the way he did. But Srila Prabhupada is saying that any sane man would have prevented him from doing such great harm to all human society. The little boys could not stop him because they were little boys. Now, what happens in the case where there are adults and similarly sane people? There is no sane person on earth than a devotee of Shri Krishna. And then when we see devotees of Shri Krishna overlooking a nonsense somebody may be doing or saying, what do we do? And how do we see such similarly sane person so that we do not also commit offenses like Shringi? What do we do?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Sahadev. Somehow I knew this kind of topic would come up. Yeah, that statement Prabhupada said, any sane person. So it's very important statement that Prabhupada made in that sentence it's powerful, because he's letting us know to be sane people. That you know, even though Shringi did this, he's a young child. And even though Shringi, you know, he was a powerful Brahmana, so he could do it. He could curse Maharaj Pariksit. He had that power. He wasn't thoughtful. So we know that that Bhagavad Gita teaches us that one must deliver himself with the help of his mind, and not degrade himself. Yeah. So Shringi definitely degraded himself because of how he allowed his mind to take control of that emotion, right? The emotion became so powerful that Shringi could not even exercise his proper intelligence as a Brahmana. So now, what do we do when we see that people may do things that they become overcome, you know, by their emotion, or they become overcome by lust, or whatever it might be, How do we address those things? Well, Prabhupada tells us, be sane. It's not that we don't acknowledge what happens. We need to be a sane society of spiritualists who understands proper and improper behaviors. And once we are able to understand that within ourselves first, question ourselves, am I having a behavior of a sane person? Am I behaving sanely with myself first? Once we're able to do that, then of course we're trained. One of the principles of culture is to be trained. So we're trained with understanding how to behave properly as an example for others. What did Prabhupada say? And I believe I think it's fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, whatever a great man does, common people will follow. And Prabhupada is the example on the previous acharyas of what a sane person does, what a great person does. So when someone is acting in a way that we see is not according to the acharyas, it's not according to, you know, the teachings, then we must speak out about that. We must speak out about that. At the same time, though, it's very important that we're constantly checking in with ourselves, that we are being examples. Because, you know, Prabhupada says material energy has no favorites, right? Yeah, whatever, it's in the fourth chapter, yeah. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. Oh, it's 3, Bhagavad Gita 3:21. Okay, and then let's go down into the purport where Prabhupada says, he says something about if people are smoking, whatever. Anyway, the thing is to be an example ourselves. That's key. That's so key, because the reason we have people doing activities that may be inappropriate is because they're not constantly checking in with themselves or having others help them check in with themselves. This is one of the biggest areas of devotee care that we're seeing that is so lacking, is that oftentimes, because lust is so huge, it is so great. And when I say lust, I'm speaking of lust just in terms of false ego. It's so great that we often need others to help us, to give us feedback, to remind us, you know, we need to constantly be checking in, because Maya has no favorites. Maya has no favorites. Maya will use any one of us in order to teach and to help others what not to do. I remember once there was a devotee, a very great devotee, visiting Bhaktitirtha Maharaj. And he asked Bhaktitirtha Maharaj when Bhaktitirtha was leaving his body. Great devotee means this devotee had done many services. And he asked Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, what can I do, you know, to show my appreciation to you? Bhaktitirtha Maharaj leaving his body. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said to him, and I never forget this because I was in the room. He said, write a book about what not to do as a devotee, what not to do. Because that devotee, although they had done many, many services, their character had become in question for some different things. So he says, write a book about what not to do. I don't think that devotee ever did that. So
I'm sure he was regretful for asking Maharaj that question.
So the point though, that what a lesson I learned from that exchange is there's so many things not to do, because Krishna consciousness is a science. It's a science, you know, it's not sentimental. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta spent his whole life reviving, the science of Krishna consciousness. So it's a science. So science is, if the data has to work, everything has to be in place, right? If you 1 and 1 has to equal 2, right? In terms of the science understanding of things. So if our behaviors within ourselves is not proper, it's only a matter of time that it will be revealed, because that's the science. That's how it works. And if we're not able to rectify ourselves, and if we're not able to ask for help, if we're not able to beg forgiveness for things we may have done that we know that it's not according to the Bhagavad Gita 3:21, then we're not properly representing the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And that's important. That's what we committed our lives to. So Maya has no favorites. Prabhupada, we hear the story of Prabhupada, how I think it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and we hear the story often. Prabhupada was praying, and I believe it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him, Prabhupada was praying to not be affected by Maya. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked him, but Prabhupada, how could you be praying, not to be affected by Maya? I mean, you're already not affected by Maya. And Srila Prabhupada says, that's why I pray. That's the reason I pray. That's the reason I'm not affected by Maya, because I pray to not be affected by Maya. So that example is there for everybody. And none of us are exempt from that. No one is exempt. No one. Lust is so huge because false ego is so huge, right? It's the last covering. That's our last covering before we can actually start really remembering who we really are in relationship to Krishna. So as long as there's still some meditation on me, then yeah, material energy will do its thing, as Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says. It'll do its thing, always. So yes, in answer to your question, we do need to address it. We need to address, however, it needs to be addressed in a certain way, and sometimes with certain people. I remember once one of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's godbrother, I was maybe not happy that this godbrother that was very close to him over the years, he had not come to see Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj during the period when he was really ill. And I remember saying, because sometimes I also speak outside of what is proper. So I remember saying that to him, to this godbrother of his, wow, you didn't come. And really my intention of speaking to him was not that I was chastising him, even though it might have sounded like that, but more so like, we missed that you weren't here. And that was my intention. He didn't hear it like that. He heard it like I was chastising him. And he told me straight out, he said, you have no business to, well, let me remember his exact words. No business to ask me because you don't understand God brothers and their relationship, something like that, something. But anyway, the lesson he taught me at the time was make sure that we're speaking and we're knowing that whoever we're speaking to, we're understanding how whatever we say might impact that person. Be aware of that, because perhaps I could have said it another way. I don't know. I'm not sure why that person had responded like that. However, that person basically was saying, this is a God brother thing. So not that we don't have a voice, it's just how we extend our voices. That's important because we want to create dialogue in the end. We want to have people, because it's about relationships, right? That's what Rupa Goswami teaches us, 6 loving exchanges. So we want to reveal our minds. At the same time, we want others to reveal their minds. So we want to do it in a way where it's symbiotic, right? We're encouraging others in how we speak. Otherwise, it just creates a culture of conflict. And who wants to live in a culture of conflict? Continuous conflict over words. Why?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for the explanation and elaboration. If anyone has a question or comment, please, you may do that.
So then I wanted to just share a few things for those of us that might still have anger. We see there's so many things in our institution right now that we're looking at in terms of how lust manifests and how anger is a part of that lust, that emotion of anger. So some things that we can do when we are triggered by someone, some other person, is we can walk away, or don't write an email. Don't respond, right? Just take some time. Just breathe. Take some time away. Become connected once again with ourselves and ask ourselves the question, why do I need to respond like this? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What is the goal? Who am I doing this for? What am I preserving? Ask ourselves those questions. Another thing we can do is to have positive self-talk, right? Talk to ourselves constantly about things that will not create anger or that will not infuse the lust that might be there with us, or talk to ourselves positively about the lust that might be there, and address it and face it and be vulnerable and open ourselves, be vulnerable to others, to positively ask them to help us to positively address however that lust might be manifesting, especially if it's manifesting in anger. Another thing we can do is just take a walk, right? Run around the block, run around the street, run a little, get some breaths, take some breaths. Take time to, maybe just let the heart start working a little bit. Get some energy. Another way is to just, visualize like a peaceful situation, a peaceful place, a peaceful setting. Like if Shringi was thoughtful, if he was mindful, using the words of the modern day spiritualists, if he was mindful, right? If he was thoughtful, if he was realizing, somehow, if I curse him, what's going to happen? How will this affect, everything? Then perhaps that would have taken we would have had a different picture about it. Now, of course, we know Krishna arranged this. Krishna arranged this picture for us, just so we can learn from Shringi. Shringi is a great teacher. He's teaching us so that we can go internally to understand, how would I be like Shringi? Would I act like Shringi? If somebody, hung a snake around my wife or my husband or my child, what would I do differently? This is the question for us to ask ourselves.
Hare Krishna. I think, Sanika, Prabhu, please unmute.
So I'm gonna ask a few people to say something. We got Atma here with these beautiful children. Wow, beautiful. Well, the next generation of devotees.
Salika, check your microphone. Right, Kavi, can I please see me on mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mother VRAJALILA. Thank you so much for the beautiful class. Actually, I have a few questions, but I'm just trying to see the line of the discussions. But let's start from where you started from. When you started the class, you said you referenced a book. If you know better, you act better. But then you explained that sometimes someone may know better and not act better because he doesn't understand how the material energy works. Could you please kindly expand a little bit on that? Because generally, if one actually knows better and in true sense of knowing, then it should have there shouldn't be a fault in his activity. So I want you to elaborate a little bit on that in relation to what is happening here.
Yeah, thank you, Salika. That's a wonderful question, a very beautiful question. I'm also asking myself that because we say Vedic culture is based on knowledge and service. And I say to myself, okay, we have the highest knowledge and we are encouraged to do service to humanity. So we know better. So why don't we do better? Why don't we do better? We know better. And oftentimes we see in our society, we're learning from the people that don't do better, which is why Bhakti Tirtha asked that person to write a book about tell people what not to do. So when I really contemplate that question, as you're asking, Shalika Prabhu, I hear what Srila Prabhupada say, that we're not exempt from the three modes of material nature. That even with all the knowledge we may have, which is why Prabhupada consistently says, it's not about how well you can speak the philosophy, right? He says, it's not about the service, the roles that you're playing in service. You can be washing the pots, right? And you can be in a better consciousness than someone that is the temple president, yeah? What I've understood from him is unless someone is pure, you're not exempt from the three modes of material nature, not exempt from Krishna's external energy. And so purity is the force. And he tells us this all the time. Purity is the force. So we can have all of this knowledge, and at the same time, we can still be influenced by the modes. We can still be influenced, like Sringi, he was influenced, even though he's the mode of goodness, he was influenced by ignorance for a moment. So even for a moment, Kali can step in to our consciousness for a moment. And that moment can create all kinds of behaviors. And we see it all the time in our society. We see people are affected by the modes. Just for a minute, they might have stepped outside of the paradigm of really knowing, right? Sometimes you can know, but then that knowing will always get tested. That's bhakti. Our knowing will always get tested. And sometimes we, material energy, there are many, we have so much storage, in our consciousness from so many other lifetimes that could just in a minute, just like a rain cloud, just shower us, right? One memory, just shower us. And it's like, whoa, we could be gone for the rest of our life. Or we could yeah, okay, I've learned from that. Please forgive me. I've learned from that. One step in a direction towards Maya. Okay, now let me go back. So as far as Sastra is concerned, in terms of what you're saying, what is that? Ahoy Takiya Pratiyata? unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service. Yeah, nectar of devotion. So that service has to be totally unmotivated, which requires purity. Yeah, it requires purity, absolute purity. Absolute purity. So this is why we got to do the work internally with ourselves.
So thank you. Thank you. So we could just say that maybe probably we could say that the gap in between knowledge and realized knowledge, like our scripture says, Gyan and Vigyan, is the missing link, because I'm not talking in terms of the activities of Maharaj Parikshit and Samaka Rishi and Shringi, because that we understand from the scriptural explanation that this is as a result of the influence of the Lord's influence, but talking in understanding the philosophy and practical application. So I'm coming from that because we are not in the category of Maharaj Parikshit, neither are we in the category of Shringi. Because for the Lord to engage someone on that level, it must have been on the particular level. But in our practical lives, could we say that it is, even though we realize, we know that we're not this body, we have some basic theoretical knowledge of the scriptures, but we have not come to the stage of Vigyan or realized knowledge. And that is what counts for our still acting inappropriately, even when we seemingly know.
Couldn't have explained it any better. Yeah, absolutely. That's using our devotional language. Unless we realize the knowledge as a fact, unless we're actually living it ourselves, unless we can say we know. And what you said was so beautiful. We can say we know, we theoretically know, we read it, we know, but that's not real knowing. That's not real knowledge, right? Knowledge is to realize it, is that, you know, all we do, all we want is Krishna. That's it. Everything we do is just for Krishna. There's nothing that involves me, right? I'm only used, I got this body because I'm using this body as a temple for Krishna, right? Me is fully realized with Krishna. That's the difference with us and those personalities like Rupa Goswami or, you know, even our Srila Prabhupada. We see the example. You know, he even showed us by his example that he told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, I can't do that service until I'm prepared, until I leave my family, until I take care of these businesses, until I do what I have to do to complete this part of my life. He said, after that, then I can take on that service that you're asking me. So Prabhupada shows us, you know, he shows us by his life what it takes to have realized knowledge. It's not something that somebody stamps you, you know, oh, you're a guru or you're, you know, whatever. That's not realized. That's not necessarily realized knowledge. We can be stamped as many things, play, you know, many roles. They're important roles. At the same time, we gotta live that example. And it's not just even, you know, there's an external and an internal, as you know, there's an external and internal. So on an external, we can be playing those roles, which are important. On the internal, are we realizing those roles? And that's a constant work, constant work. I think those persons that have those roles, they're fully aware of that. It's a constant work. Yeah.
Thank you, Mother. I have a second question, but I see another hand up. I don't know if sorry for
let me ask my question. I beg.
Yeah, I will let Marika go.
Okay, Pablo, you can go ahead.
Please, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Sadi Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Mother. Thank you, Dandava Pranam, Mother. Please accept my humble obeisance.
Yes. Prabhu. I see you're traveling, Prabhu. I see you're benedicting many souls.
Sorry,
I see you're benedicting many souls. I'm happy to see that. Yeah, it's nice.
No, where am I? Where?
In Nairobi, I saw you in
Okay. I was in Nairobi.
yeah.
Yes, to
I saw
purify
you in
myself. To
December.
purify myself. Yes, ma. So my question is looking like comments, but let me ask it. Let me try to put it in the best way that I can grab. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's like we are the one creating the kind of illusion. Is it illusion? I will call it. That is not making us to act properly in the spiritual in our spiritual practice. What I mean by that is that when we want to rate Prabhupada, we say Prabhupada is a transcendental person, is a spirit soul. So Prabhupada cannot make any mistake, which is quite all right. And the Prabhupada is supposed to be the best example for us to emulate. And so when we talk about the spiritual people like our gurus, we put them in a position that they are superhumans. And at the same time, we look at these people as the people we are supposed to follow. So it put devotee in a kind of in a kind of isolation way of thinking. Okay, if I cannot meet up with this person, and this person I'm supposed to emulate, I'm supposed to follow, then I think I should create my own kind of standard. And in that way, we cannot connect. We cannot act. We are not either following those people we are supposed to follow. And because we are not on that platform to act on that in that way, so we create a kind of lifestyle for ourselves that it becomes a disturbance to us in our society. So I'm trying to understand this. And let me bring one example from Chaitanya Charitamrita. There is this one associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who is very elevated and is very close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's very critical about what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing. And there's a particular time, this young boy always coming to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu room, and he knows that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a Sannyasi. He's not supposed to associate with a son of a widow. So that because of what people are going to say. And at a particular time, he could not be able to hold himself. And he challenged Chaitanya Mahaprabhu face to face. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is supposed to be the supreme personality of God who does not take offense, who does not care about what people talk about him, either criticizing him. But we can see in the later parts of that pastime, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to punish him, he sent him away from his far away from his place. He sent him to another place. So is it? We can say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the supreme Lord. He's not acting on a platform of false ego. But at the same time, we can see that the activities they are showing is to show that this is how we should behave when somebody misbehaves or somebody do this. So sometimes we put our philosophy in a way that we ourselves we cannot follow. Then when we see the devotee acting contrarily, they will become bewildered. So I want more explanation on this, man. Thank you.
Haribol, Hare Krishna. Wow, you said a lot in that statement, Prabhu, and that's a beautiful pastime. And yes, Lord Chaitanya did send him away, and he was a young boy, right? However, I hear three different things that's happening here. Is one, you're saying Prabhupada is the absolute, that everybody accepts Srila Prabhupada, and that and Prabhupada, we accept him as not ever making any mistakes. Prabhupada himself never said he didn't make mistakes, right? Prabhupada is absolute in terms of us understanding what bhakti means. But there are some things that Srila Prabhupada did that he might have done that he would have done some things differently. And so you could say, well, in terms of our understanding, right? Our limited understanding, we could say, well, there's something Srila Prabhupada might have done differently had he known X, Y, or Z, right? Had he been informed X, Y, or Z. And we could label it as a mistake. On an absolute platform, in the consciousness where Prabhupada is, or where Rupa Goswami is, or in the consciousness where Bhaktisiddhanta is, it wouldn't be a mistake because it would be something that somehow or other is used to help us understand how the spiritual, paradigm works. So first thing is, it's important for us to have the humility to know that our level of consciousness or our level of relating to things is different than those devotees that are fully committed, that fully commit their lives, everything about themselves to the service of the Lord. That's the first thing. So we're having a different experience in most cases, not all, but in many cases. Our experience is different. We can see that even in our daily relationship with each other. You can see that sometimes somebody else is acting in a way that, they appear to be like more advanced. They may be more advanced. They're more austere. They're more simple. They're more, committed to the process. They're more dedicated to helping humanity. So in some ways that's like, we see that right here, right? As we look at each other, we see more people like that, more devotees that have those abilities. So what I'm hearing is this culture of humility is getting somewhat lost. There's a culture of humility that's a part of our Vaishnava culture that is very important in terms of understanding how to interact with each other. It's all about relationships. Bhakti Siddhartha Maharaj says it's always sambandha. This is the foundation of everything that we're doing, is to have these relationships. So if it is about relationships, why are we choosing to have conflicted relationships? Why do we choose that? Why do we choose to have a relationship where there is constant conflict because I'm not humble enough to accept, another person and their level of how they're experiencing bhakti, right? We don't know how another person is experiencing bhakti unless we're them. And unfortunately, we are just us. So we're just ourselves. So to be able to, what is it, in that same pastime that you talked about, it wasn't that Lord Chaitanya disrespected that little boy, that young person. Lord Chaitanya made arrangements for him. He personally made arrangements for him to be sent to be in another environment. So that young person was still being respected, and maybe not respected in the way that we think, but he was still being protected with his bhakti. He was still able to practice Krishna consciousness. And he was able to learn about that behavior not being the best behavior in that environment, right? With Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was affecting other people in that environment, right? There was one other person that kept asking, why is Lord Chaitanya allowing him to do that, to speak to him like that or be like that? I can't quite remember the full of that pastime, but I remember some of it. And so I think one thing that is important in our association with each other that we forget is really how we are each other's keepers. That's what Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj teaches us. We're each other's keepers. And it doesn't matter what role someone is playing. Our mood, our attitude is to really know that I am the caretaker of that person. Lord Chaitanya taught us in that situation. He was the caretaker. He did it in a way that we could use and say, oh, but he sent him away. But that was still caretaking, right? He was still protecting him, he was still caretaking. They didn't send him back to Maya. So we always need to remember that, it's not, we're caretaking each other. That's what Prabhupada taught us. And if we want to follow 321, if we want to follow Bhagavad Gita 321, then we got to act in the way that Prabhupada asked us to act, which is to be examples for us, but for each other and for humanity. That's the mood of all of these personalities that we see that are trying to help us to remember Krishna consciousness, to remember who we are, what we're all about. So unless we have this mood of humility, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because we will always,
So sorry, mother. So to put it more in a clearer picture, let me give a very practical example. Why so many times in a society, in devotee society, a relationship looks like it doesn't go very smoothly. Let me give a very good example. In a society, in a society of devotee, where we are supposed to be completely spiritual, and we have all our things we are supposed to do to make us look spiritual. Let's say, for example, there's a devotee in that community. It's not completely spiritual. Let's say, for example, let me give myself as an example. I like watching football. In a Hare Krishna paradigm, watching football will look like this devotee is in a Maya. So, and these other devotees who are able to follow all those principles, not watching TV, not doing this, not watching whatever is going on in the material world. So they begin to look the other devotee who is not completely on the spiritual platform to be able to give up all those things. So they look at them as if this person is in the Maya, because why? He cannot completely follow all those standards we are supposed to follow as a devotee. So how can we balance our society in a way that when somebody is completely spiritual and somebody is not completely spiritual but is trying? So how can we balance this? Let me put it in a very practical way so that we can be able to understand more.
Yes, thank you. So that's again is the mood of Srila Prabhupada, to encourage everyone, right? When the devotees came to Srila Prabhupada in the very beginning, or for anyone, any of the persons that are taking on the responsibility of authority to understand that they're servants. So when someone comes to them, usually they're mixed in their devotion, right? Most people are mixed in devotion. And so then those persons that have that kind of authority, that responsibility to helping those persons, they help them in a way that's loving and kind and compassionate. And sometimes it could be like Lord Chaitanya, send them away, right? It could be like that. So it's not that it's all nicey, or Gurudev says all the time, but Titya Tamaraj always says, what is it? It's not just everything is all beautiful and wonderful. No, I mean, Krishna consciousness is very deep. And if somebody is attached to football, well, sorry, I mean, I'm not judging that, but however, I would ask you a question. When you are absorbed in, let's say you're absorbed in watching football, and then, okay, let's say that activity is finished, and then you go to the temple to give a class, right? Let's say right after the game is over, and you're like, yeah, whatever, whoever is winning right now, whatever, right? Shot a goal, yeah. And you go to the temple after that to give a class or to hear a class. What's happening for you? Are you then like a happy devotee? I'm just asking, are you a happy devotee when you go, like, a happy devotee in knowing that you're a devotee? Are you happy knowing that you're a devotee when you go to the temple after that, right after that?
Thank you very much, Ma. It's a very good question. And that is why the practice of Krishna consciousness helps devotee, because, like, say, for example, I'm a devotee and I like watching football. As a devotee, I will not be attached to the result of the football, whether somebody loses or somebody win. So you'll be detached. So that is the platform on which a devotee can be looking at that game.
Are you on that platform? I was in India one year when the cricket match was going on, and I was amazed at the devotees, brahmacharis, and how attached they were to the results of that cricket match in India when they won. I was just like surprised. I was so surprised. So again, I'm saying, we got to go within. It's not about judging where someone else is. It's about understanding where we are and to be able to have compassion for somebody else that might not be where we are. Yeah, because even in a person's consciousness that might watch, they may watch, let's say football, whatever they watch, football. However, their consciousness may be different than someone that's smoking cigarettes and taking drugs and still trying to be a devotee. So in every level of how we are existing in devotional life, we can be compassionate and caring for each other. Doesn't matter. You know, we're all mixed devotees in many ways. And everyone is, that's the whole process. We're trying to, you know, take shelter. We want to take shelter. And for those devotees that are taking the responsibility to really take shelter, it's important to really be respectful to them, you know, because they're showing, they're trying their best to take shelter. So if we are not able to appreciate such devotees, then we're a nonsense. We're not humble, you know, and we're not humble. We can accept that. We are not humble. And we can accept, okay, I'm a nonsense, but do I want to stay being like that? Because we gotta understand there's two kinds of devotees. Two kinds of devotees. There's a happy devotee and a miserable devotee, right? A miserable devotee. And we know one way that we can keep being a miserable devotee is to really absorb in sense gratification. We already know that. We know that theoretically. Do we really know it? No, we don't really know it. That's why we still engage in sense gratification. Are we going to be a happy devotee? A real happy devotee, spends their time really trying to engage in Krishna's consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, right? What does this explain? If you can't use it for Krishna, if you can't see it for Krishna, then it falls under the category of sense gratification. So I don't know, maybe you can dovetail football in Krishna consciousness. Tell me how you do it. I'm not sure. Maybe you can, you know, I don't know. I'm not judging. Tell me how. I'm there. Maybe Krishna says you can engage everything in his service.
I don't want to go deep into that. I know there's Krishna is playing so many different kind of sports in the spiritual world. We can leave that. We can join in some of the sports they do. But I have another question.
Wait. I want to go there. Krishna and Balaram, you see, they're playing. Yeah, they're having all kinds of fun. But then it's for Krishna. It's for Krishna.
Yes, it's for Krishna. Yes, ma. There's another one, ma. As one debate, somebody asked me a question. I want you to give more explanation on that question. So I try to answer in a best possible way I could comprehend the question and the answer also. So the question is that I know that when our sciences are given name, they give them name. Your name is Bhakti Sahadev Swami. Or Bhakti.
Don't go there. Don't go there. Who told you Sahadev is planning to renounce?
It's okay, Babu. So I will put it Bhakti Kavikadakura Swami, so whatever.
Yeah, good.
So they are giving this name, and Swami is added to their name. I've never seen any Sayansi that is giving name and Maharaj is added to their name. It's either Swami or Goswami. But out of respect, we call them Maharaj, which is not written anywhere in the scripture that Maharaj is added to their name. So somebody now asks me, why do you call Srivas Vanachari Maharaj? I say, I call him Maharaj because it's on the platform of Guru. So I want to respect him in that way. Just like other Sayansi also, Maharaj is not added to their name. But people address them as Maharaj as a respect. And that is the reason why I do that. So I want you to bring some points from the scripture, ma, where this is wrong or right about what I'm saying. Thank you.
Well, so it's firstly, I'm going to answer this from part of my training, which might not be devotional language. My first answer to that would be wanting to ask that person, what is the intention of wanting to have that detail, because it's a detail. What is the importance of that detail? How is that important to someone embracing Krishna consciousness? I guess I would want to ask that to that person. That's my first.
I can answer for him, ma. I can answer for him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can answer for him.
Okay.
Why it's very important is that, you know, in a society where something become norms, it become part of the culture of that society. Like we call these swamis Maharaj. Maharaj literally means the great king. They are not king. They are Goswami. They are Swami. They're controlling their senses. They are master of their senses. But Maharaj means a great king, a respect. Because that culture has been there in the society, either in the Vedic culture or in the Hare Krishna society, Maharaj, we address somebody who has taken control of his senses or who is a renunciant as Maharaj, as a great person. It becomes the culture and it becomes the part of the society. So the person is asking, okay, if this person is not a Sayansi, but is a guru, and you address him as a Sayansi, you address him as a Maharaj, don't you think that may become a culture in the future? So that is the intention.
Okay. So, okay, it's still a detail. However, it's an
May I say something in regard after you answer, Mother Raj?
Yes, sure. It's an important detail for that person. So let's start from the premise of compassion, right? Which is the mood of a devotee. How to have compassion and how to have empathy. So this person is having some thoughts that are different than mine, right? So we want to, first of all, understand that within myself. Okay, this person is having a different perspective than my perspective. How can I compassionately, with empathy, encourage this person to remember Krishna rather than the detail, which is important for an institution? So the first thing is, okay, in an institution, that is not necessarily what can help us to understand our relationship with Krishna. Okay, Prabhupada started this institution of ISKCON, and he gave us, you know, these different principles to help us. However, in an institution, you have people that may or may not understand, you know, the Vedic culture and Vedic scriptures, right? In an institution. So we know that there are people like that. So we want to see, like, how can I encourage this person? So you already said the meaning of Maharaj. You have that understanding that Maharaj, you know, means king, or, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean, you said a Swami means controlling the senses, which all of those details, you know, unless somebody is realized with the details, then it can be important or not important, right, for that person. So again, from what I've understood from Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, addressing these details, it's important to, again, go back to that verse. Is that person that you're labeling either Maharaj or Swami or whatever, is that person an example of what the scripture is teaching us, which is to surrender our lives to Krishna, which is to really act on behalf of the Lord by showing that we are trying to engage others to love Krishna? Is that person such an example? If that person is such an example, then then your perspective of those titles, because we know that there are Maharajas or Swamis that have the title of Swami that really do inappropriate things. We know that. So those titles are based on really understanding what character and what example is that person being for others. So we can keep it kind of out of the conflict zone and more in the zone of educating someone about what is really important in this situation. Because if you try to convince someone of your perspective, it doesn't work in terms of trying to convince someone, oh, the reason I do it is because of this and therefore you should do it. No, you do it because that is important to you. You're seeing that this person is an example of Maharaj or Swami or whatever you can call Srivas Prabhu Swami, if he's an example of controlling his senses. You know what I mean? That's the example that he's setting. I'm controlling my senses. Now, whatever that other person is thinking, you can only have empathy, compassion for them and say, look, this is my perspective. This is my understanding. You know, I'm sorry. This is whatever you think, that's how you think. That's your perspective. Now you're asking the question, what does the scripture say? So the scripture tells us, right? The scripture tells us, okay, a person that's a Swami, a person, we in the institution have labeled the Maharaj, as you said, but the real meaning of any of these little details is to have examples of a person that is exemplary. That is actually the most important thing. And if the person is not exemplary, whether you call them a Swami or not, it doesn't matter if they're not exemplary. It doesn't matter. So I'm coming, Saha. The thing is, Prabhu, is don't allow yourself to become frustrated or disturbed over somebody else's understanding of how they, because people make choices, right? And they choose, for whatever their intentions are. Someone that would be so caught up in those details to me is really, in my understanding, is someone that is more of a judgmental person, because they can't change. If a person is in a position to change the institution and the culture of the institution, then that conversation is important. If a person is not in a position to change the institution, then it's like Gramya Kata, it's just a conversation to find fault, to make judgments. And that's dangerous. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj explains in Radha Sunya, a book about offenses, it's very delicate. And we're not aware sometimes how we're making offenses to other people. So we got to be a little bit careful. Yeah. And anyway, that's just my little understanding. There's others on this call that probably has a lot more input than I do.
Thank you, Ma.
I'm very careful. I'm very cautious about making offenses, because for me, I'm like a little shringy. So I got to be really careful.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Ma, for your input. Thank you, Ma.
Harbo Sahade, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Well, thank you for the question, Kavikana Prabhu, because the question you asked, somebody had asked, and His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj, again Maharaj, has answered that question. And Maharaj was saying that somebody was asking him, you are being addressed as Maharaj, but you are not a king. And you accepted the address. So he answered, he says, yes, I'm being addressed as Maharaj. He explained. And our own, this devotee, I've forgotten the name, but the name will come. He has also explained the same thing. And it's the same as what Maharaj explained. What Maharaj was saying is that when we say Maharaj, Maharaj means a great king. And what is the duty of a king? So like Mother Vraj was explaining, it is all based on activities. So a king protects his citizens and his kingdom. So someone who has been able to protect his internal kingdom is called Maharaj. And the clearest way somebody is deemed as being able to protect his internal kingdom is to give up sex life. Somebody may be following everything to the letter as the scriptures explain. As long as that person is a married person, according to our institution, he is not addressed as a Swami, he is not addressed as Maharaj, he is not addressed as Goswami. Srila Bhaktivinoda is a pure devotee. He never ever was addressed as Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee from the beginning of his birth, even before his birth. But he never was addressed as a Swami until he gave up family life and he took up sannyasi. So we should not have disrespect to someone not being addressed as a Swami or as a Maharaj if that devotee is acting as expected, like Mother Raj was saying. But for institutional sake, we do not have to address someone who is a Grihasta as a Swami, Goswami, or Maharaj. That is our institutional norm. That's what I would say, because that is the explanation I got from His Holiness Keshava Bhagavan Swami Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And that explanation also is debatable because it's not mentioned in any scripture, just based on a reference on the past.
Well, it is hard to say that it is not mentioned in any scripture because you and I or any other person here cannot say emphatically that we know all the scriptures. And you know
so,
that.
No, I know. What I'm saying is that what I'm saying that the Maharaj did not give you specifically in a script, the scripture where it's been mentioned and give details of how this person should be addressed because it's like this and this one. It's not. They didn't give that kind of a reference to the scripture. That will help us a lot, No,
that's what I'm saying. Well, what you're saying is okay, but what you said initially that no one knows from the scriptures, that you cannot say, because if you do not know, if I do not know, if he does not know, does not mean that it is not in the scriptures.
No, that's what I'm saying. You are saying
Krishna,
what I'm saying is that
I'm going to interrupt.
Maharaj will have given a scripture. If you have given a scripture, then I will not be asking the question. I will just go to that scripture and pick it up, because I've not read all the scriptures. I know it's true, and I don't know so many of our scripture also, which is true. But I want somebody who knows to show me that this is why this is like this and this is why it's like that. So, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And Sahadev, thank you so much for this beautiful, part of the class in terms of clarification of titles and roles. I think what's important at the end of the day is, what is it that Krishna wants? What pleases Krishna? Is it a title? Is it a title, or is it the person's character, behavior, how the person is actually appreciating devotees and serving devotees? What is it that pleases the Lord? That is what's important. That's what's key. These details, are forever changing in our institution, as we can see. Now, the question about whether it's sastric or not, that I'm hearing needs to be explored. And yes, it's important to explore it. It doesn't change the fact, though. It doesn't change the fact of what is my intention for calling anyone any title. What is my intention? What is my intention to not call someone by a title? What is my intention? Again, it is back to being internal. Why is that important to me? I'm hearing for Saha, it's important as an institutional detail, right? For Kavikanapurna, I'm hearing it may be important. At the same time, I would like to see it in Sastra. I would like to hear it in Sastra. Now, what I'm hearing underneath both of you, is a real desire to understand how a person can exemplify whichever one of those titles that may be used. And that's what's in question. Is that person exemplary? Whoever that person may be, that have whatever title they may have. And that we can only see from the person's actions, right? And that's what we look at. So these conflicts that we have, it's really important to really, again, come back to the essence of Krishna consciousness. What is it that's really important here? Is it a title that's important? Krishna shows this to us over and over again. We see, Sringi had the title of a Brahmana, supposedly the most intelligent people on the planet at the time. And yet he did that grave offense. We see that. And we see it over and over again in our institution. People with different titles, again and again, making all kinds of horrible mistakes. So is it the title? Is it the title that we want to care about? Or is it the person and the person's behavior and how the person is actually exemplifying Krishna consciousness? That, I think, is what's important. So.
Thank you so much, Mother.
Yeah.
Govinda Prabhu, you have some, okay, please unmute. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
This is set my humble obeisances. All glories to Gurudev, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Mataji, I have two questions. My first question is very simple.
How do you know it's simple?
Well, I say it's a simple question because
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, it's a very simple question because it's something that we've been discussing over and over and over and over. So we are all abridged to this very question of Sringi, the Brahmana boy, becoming angry, and as a result of that, so much disaster has taken place. And Srila Prabhupada says that this boy was inexperienced. So that is a simple question. Prabhupada said inexperienced. What does Srila Prabhupada mean by that? That Sringi was inexperienced. What is the experience that Prabhupada was talking about? I'm asking this question because, like you rarely reference Bhagavad Gita about the qualities that is expected of a Brahmin. And we know these qualities serve as a blockage to the development of one's Krishna consciousness, or for one to be close to Krishna. These qualities has to be removed from the heart. A quality like anger, greed, lust, and all that, it has to be removed for a person to become pure. And when one is pure, then we all know that he's close to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada said this boy was inexperienced. What does Srila Prabhupada mean by this boy being inexperienced?
Thank you, Govinda, for your very deep question. And I see Sahadev has here a purport. Here the Prabhupada says the little Brahmana wanted to show his prowess in destruction, and he had the audacity to punish such a great king as Maharaj Parikshit. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. That's immaturity, right? That's inexperience. So here he was inexperienced because he didn't fully realize or understand, as Salika Prabhu said, the teachings that he was supposed to represent. He didn't fully understand. He was a Brahmana. He's supposed to be, he's young, so he didn't fully understand the knowledge. Not because of his physical age that he didn't understand. He didn't fully understand, but more because he was affected also by his peers. He was affected by his friends. You know, he saw that this was an opportunity for him to show how powerful he was, and he took that opportunity to do that. So he was inexperienced in that. When he was told by his father, Shamaka Rishi Prabhu, why did you do that? This behavior you had is going to affect the whole world. You know, it's something that you have, what you have done. I mean, of course, as we say, Krishna arranged it, but if he was in any way experienced, he would have understood what I say, what I do, how I behave is going to affect not just these little playmates I'm with, it's going to affect everyone. So he didn't have that understanding. And we could say, well, maybe he didn't because he was a young kid. But however, we can see, look at Prahlad Maharaj. He was a young kid and he had so much understanding, you know, about the personality of Godhead. So it's not because he was a young kid. It's because he was immature in his understanding of the knowledge of the Vedic culture, of the real culture.
Yes, so that is that's my point. That's why I was referring to Gita about these qualities that make one actually go close to Krishna. One has to remove all the impurities in the heart in the form of these qualities. And so a matured person, you know, still harboring these qualities, how can he be so powerful? You know, in African tradition, one can just go close to any river, or there are certain, you know, rivers and gulls that, you know, you call their name with a snap, and whatever you want them to do, they do it very instantly. You know, they raise curses, and these curses affect whoever is in the line. And that is the small god, the smaller gods, you know. But one cannot bribe Krishna that way. You know, one has to have a certain purity, you know, like Durvasa Maharaj and Ambarish Maharaj. You know, Ambarish did not react, but Durvasa Maharaj's action, you know, Krishna immediately came in for us to understand the purity of a devotee, that Krishna is always, you know, by him, without a devotee even acting, you know. So an experienced person, one who does not follow the religious principles, who is harboring all the bad qualities, who does not know what to do or what is to be done and what is not to be done. So such an experienced person, what did he do to be able to get that much power and to be able to curse, and the curse will have effect immediately? That is my question. What my understanding of inexperienced somebody is someone who does not know what to be done and what to be done. One who is not acting properly, one who is not following any right, one who has no culture. And a person of that nature, how can he be powerful? That is my point. How can he be powerful?
So an answer to your question, Govinda Prabhu, and I invite anyone else that would like to share on this. Knowledge makes us powerful. Vedic knowledge is very powerful. And don't forget who Shringi was. He's the son of a great Brahmin, Shamaka Rishi. So he was trained in that knowledge, right? He had the knowledge, he had the understanding. He just overcome
But
that lust.
I'm not cutting. there's difference between knowledge. The knowledge, theoretical knowledge is there, and there's practical knowledge. So one has to have the knowledge and translate the knowledge to become wisdom. So you have the knowledge, and if knowledge is applied, that means you really have knowledge. Otherwise, everybody can get knowledge. And being a son of Brahmin does not make one a Brahmana. You have to develop the qualities of Brahmana. And when you're on that platform of Brahmin, your Brahmin means you've realized the Supreme Brahma. You know Supreme Brahma means that you know exactly what to do to be able to place the Supreme Brahma. And if you don't have all that, then how can you become powerful?
Because even with all that, as you said, all of what you shared it's so beautiful and so powerful. Shringi minimized Krishna's external energy. He minimized that. He minimized this understanding that he's to teach us all the power of lust, the power of the false ego, the power of pride, right? Shringi was prideful, and that can attack us at any time, whether we're great devotees or not, whether we'll learn it or not. We may be learned, and as you said, we may be learned but not realize, as Salika said, you're saying, with that knowledge, right? So Shringi, at that moment, he lost all intelligence at that moment. And that's the lesson. That's the lesson. At any given moment, that can happen to any one of us with all of the knowledge that we've been graced to have. And this is why it is so important to not take bhakti lightly. That bhakti is a work within. Every single day is a work within. We spend so much time just really trying to make bhakti external. We put bhakti into, what somebody else is doing, how they're doing, there's so much emphasis on the externals. Bhakti is really within us, that we need to look at this life of Shringi and ask those questions. If that can happen to Shringi, what can happen to me? What can happen to me? Here is Shringi, this example of this powerful young man, but yet he fell. Just for that moment, he fell. Why did he fall like that? We cannot minimize Krishna's external energy. And Krishna's external energy comes in different ways, comes to each and every one of us in different ways. One of the things that we really need to avoid, which Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj Saraswati really emphasizes in his math, one of his principles, is never criticize another person. Look within. First, look within yourself. That's one of his 64 principles. If we live our life if we try to live that one principle in our life, then, I think then we will become a little bit more compassionate with ourselves first, because one of the reasons, Govinda Prabhu, a lot of the times when we have challenges in our institution or we have challenges with each other, it's really because we don't really care about ourselves so much. We don't really care about ourselves, and we just live based on looking at all the externals and not really learning how to really understand ourselves, So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. There's one last thing I wanted to share with you, and I was looking for it and I finally found it. And this is by the devotee that Swami or Maharaj or whatever title they use for him, Sahadev, that you spoke about.
Yeah.
What's his name? I love his name.
Swayam
Bhagavan.
Swayam Bhagavan. Sounds like a king. Swayam Bhagavan.
Swayam Bhagavan Keshav.
Swayam Bhagavan Keshavan.
Keshava Maharaj. Yes,
Yeah.
Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj. Sounds like
very sweet Maharaj.
Very sweet. So I'd like to quote something from him that that I by his grace, I'm somehow wanting to implement this in my life, and I'm sharing this with all of you. Live without pretending. Live without pretending. That's a big one. Dr. Tirtha Marsh talk about that all the time. HARE without defending. HARE without defending. This addresses our ego, helps us to develop more humility. He explains how in the first few years of Krishna consciousness, we're having this idea of, when we hear things, we just think, oh, how does, how am I going to speak it in such a way that it impacts, so many people? And then he said, he went on to explain, he says, but then as we go on, we realize, that no one is really thinking about us. Not really. No one is really thinking about us, which is why it's important for us to really kind of think about what's going on within us. The next thing he says is that really try to find people, healthy spiritual life. He says, find people who are willing to give you feedback, and feedback from a place of love, of care, of genuine dialogue, right? This is one of the things we're emphasizing. Compassionate dialogue, caring about the person. The next one he said was speak without offending. Speak without offending. Now that was what Shringa did, right? He spoke and he offended. Of course, Maharaj Pariksit didn't take it as an offense, but yet, we're learning from that experience of Shringa. Speak without offending. He made this quote, people will remember what we said, but words stick in people's minds. And of course, we know the Bhagavad Gita verse, right? It's in the 17th chapter. Words stick. So why create this harmonious relationship? Because of the words that we use. Be careful of our words. And lastly, he gave these little sutras. Love without expecting. Love without expecting. So can I really try to love those devotees around me without expecting that they have the same perspective that I do? And I still love them and really care about them and really be compassionate and have empathy, because we need to create a real society, a real institution that's founded in love. This is now Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj quote, his school of love. The school of love is what ISKCON is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about criticizing and finding fault and having intentions to just downsize another person. It's about bringing people up, as Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's mood. And even if they may not have the character, as Govinda Prabhu is saying, our service is to help people to develop those character. Even if I love the football game, right? And I really love it. It's my service to help someone to remember, like, okay, please remember Krishna while you're watching the football game. Maybe you can make sure that there's some prasadam there. Maybe it's some way, bring Krishna in the picture, some kind of way, bring Krishna. So we're always to encourage each other, always. If we keep that, we will start becoming a sane society, a sane institution.
I know, sir, maybe someone else has something to ask.
Yeah,
But
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, let me finish with this one. Mata, I really enjoy your translation today for this very verse. You have actually break it down to our modern contemporary lives. The topic of anger, of Srini, the way you've dealt with is really, really wonderful. and it's very practical. I love your class today, and I really, really appreciate it. We don't realize how anger affect us, affect our own being. When you become angry, after that anger, you feel that you realize that you are not the same. So many things goes out of you. Your whole mental faculty is disturbed. Anger can cause breakage of relationship. Someone can stay with a spouse for 30 years, 40 years, and just a small thing, then the whole family is in disaster. Country to country, now so much war is going on. And if you dig deep into it, you see that it's just something very small because of uncontrolled anger. So many millions of people have to live their life, they have to die. And we can go on and on and on and on and on like this. So this anger is really a problem. Now, my question is, you see, we are conditioned souls. We are talking about these things, we know the effect of it and all that. But when it happens to us, when this anger arises, when the challenge comes, then we forget about all that we know, and then we fall prey into this anger, and we get ourselves implicated. What should one do when he sees the anger coming? What should be his thoughts practically so that you can run away from it? There is one lecture I listened about a guy approaching a sage, I think it's from the same marriage. And he was telling the sage that I have a secret for becoming rich. And the brahmachari said, yeah. I would like to know. I said, but you are a brahmachari, you are a monk, why do you want to be rich? And he said, well, I need money to serve Krishna. I said, so I want to know. And so this guy said, if you want to be rich, don't spend money. When you have the money, don't spend it, keep it. You'll be rich. But if the money comes and you start spending, throw it everywhere, then you'll be poor, you lose that money. And so we invest so much in our spiritual practice by chanting and hearing and doing so many, austerities, which Krishna says is our word. The word of Brahmana is austerity. And so after accruing all that riches, then we can also throw it away just like that by becoming angry. When you become angry, America or Englishman say you are mad. A mad person can do anything. Because he's mad, he's out of his senses. So you can act anyhow. So when one is angry, he can say anything, cause destruction to himself by uprooting all the good things he has installed spiritually. He can throw all that away because of simple thing, uncontrolled anger. So the question is, when we see this anger coming, when we see provoking words, then that will make us angry. What is to be done at the moment, practically, so that we can, at least we can free ourselves from this trouble. I see it as something very dangerous, and it needs to be guarded off.
Well, thank you so much, Govinda Prabhu. Haribol. Yeah, anger is within each and every person. Anger lives in us, and there's two ways I'd like to look at dealing with anger, as you said. One, I'll tell a quick little story of how one person deals with anger, and then we can check within ourselves and see what kind of person am I. So there's this sage that was taking a bath in one of the holy rivers. Let's say he was taking a bath in the Ganga. And he, when he came out of the bath, there was this person that was very angry with this sage. And he spat at him, spit at him, right? And so the sage was getting ready to go and do his rituals. And so he, of course, he has to be clean. So he went back into the Ganga, right, to take bath again. And then this person came and spat at him again, right? Spit at him. He went back again into the Ganga, took bath again, came back out. Again, it happened. It happened 108 times. And he took bath in the Ganga 108 times. Every time that person spit on him, we just go back and take bath. And so finally, somebody that was one of the persons, the pilgrims that was there that was watching, came to the sage and said, how can you tolerate this? I've sat here watching this go on. You know, it's, you know, how could you do this? How could you, why aren't you doing something to this person? And the sage looked at him and said, why would I be disturbed? I get to take bath 108 times in the Ganga, in the holy river. So, you know, his mood was like, I get to take bath in Ganga. I get to go in the Ganga 108 times. Why would I be disturbed with this person, right? So there's a consciousness of our shelter is Krishna. Right? That's our consciousness. That's a level of consciousness. My shelter is Krishna. Why am I going to get disturbed with this person? This person is acting in the modes of material nature, whether it's ignorance or passion or even goodness. Why get disturbed? Krishna, he arranges everything. He even arranged it with Shringi Maharaj Pariksit. That's a level of consciousness. There's another level of consciousness that I tend to operate on more myself is, for me, when I experience feelings of anger that's triggered by some situation, I breathe. First, I breathe. I find breathing to be really, really important. I take some deep breaths, real breaths where you feel your stomach protruding like a balloon. And then you just breathe it out and you breathe and you breathe. And then I check in. What is it that I am needing? Why this emotion is so strong? What do I need? Shringi needed respect. What do I need? At this moment, what do I need? This person is not fulfilling what I need. What is it that I need? Once I get in tune with myself and I understand what I need, what is it that's motivating me? Then I'm able to say, okay, let's just say, most cases, people want respect. For me, a lot of times, especially with our institution, one of the things that triggers me is inclusion, right? As a woman, as a Black woman, and not getting included, that's a little bit of a trigger sometimes. So I go to that, and I was like, okay, I'm triggered by that. I need inclusion. I need to be included. I'm not getting included. What to do? And then I go and I either read something where Krishna then soothes me, or I chant, or I go to somebody and I speak to them. Yeah, and I'm vulnerable. I let people know, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like it. Sometimes I could feel that tension, that frustration inside, which could turn out to be anger if I don't really address it, if I don't, make sure that I'm understanding it. Because then I get to understand, Krishna, okay, if you want me to be included, great. If you don't, okay, how do I learn to accept that? How do I learn acceptance? It's Krishna consciousness is a science. It's a science. And some things we may not get, and we got to accept. And it's okay, because Krishna ultimately, who's who I'm trying to please. Bhaktisiddhanta teaches us, who are we trying to please? I'm trying to please my guru. I'm trying to please Krishna, right? I'm trying to please my guru. Did my guru always get accepted? No. Did my guru sometimes want more inclusion? Yeah. Okay. Did he accept it and kept going anyway and taking shelter of the Lord and being an example? Yes, absolutely. So by the time I do that, my anger is like, okay, Haribo, so I use the science and I don't feed the emotion. Because if I feed the emotion, what it's going to tell me is this is another show of that same thing. I breathe. Am I feeling? I'm feeling really angry. I'm pissed off. What? Then what? The next thing, I'm going to blame somebody. They're not doing this, they're not that, they're not Maharaj, they're not this, they're not the other thing, they're not what. I'm going to turn it external. And then, am I going to be a happy devotee? No, I'm going to be a miserable devotee. So do I want to be a happy devotee? Yes, I don't want to be a miserable devotee. No. So I got to make a choice. I got to make a choice. Am I going to feed the emotion of anger? I'm going to learn the science of Krishna consciousness. Am I on the level of that sage that can just say, I'm bathing, in the Ganges and I'm okay? No, that would be spiritual bypassing for me, because that's not where I'm at. And we all got to know, how are we spiritual bypassing? By using the philosophy of where we're not. We all got to come to terms with that. And to do that, we got to be honest. We got to be transparent. We got to be vulnerable. We got to be real. And we got to take responsibility for what's going on within us. So it starts with ourselves again. So that's the two ways that I can understand dealing with anger, Govinda Prabhu. And
Yeah,
the one
thank you, Mata. Thank you.
the one I teach the most devotees, believe it or not, is the second one. The first one, I always make sure this is our goal. We want to be like that sage, but if you're not there, let's see where you are and let's work with it from there, okay? Because anger is a natural emotion and it gets triggered every single day. And you know what? Most of the time, we're angry with ourselves. Most of the time, we're angry with ourselves. First of all, we're angry with ourselves for having taken these bodies in this material world, and we don't want to admit it. A lot of times, I'm just pissed off. I have to go through all this suffering and all this because I made this choice. And then second of all, we're angry with ourselves because they're not the way we want it to be, because we're not controllers of this material world. We never will be. And so things will always be not the way we want it to be. And we get angry. And the other reason we get angry with ourselves, because we're guilty, because we're not acting on the platform we know we're supposed to. We're guilty. And we use that guilt to make it external, and we create another reality. We're already in a reality. We create another reality of what's wrong with them, as opposed to what's wrong with me. So yeah, I'm a big, I don't know, person in terms of, trying to use a word, but somebody that's really knowing the importance of really looking within ourselves. When I look at myself, I just pray for forgiveness. That's all I can do. Dear Lord, please forgive me. Please forgive me, dear Lord. Please. Please forgive me. Please forgive me, dear devotees. Please forgive me. Done so many things in ignorance and passion. Please forgive me.
Hare Krishna, Mother, thank you so much. And Salika Prabhu, Mother, we thank you so much for spending all this time with us. It's quite unusual that we've spent this much time. Salika Prabhu, you may unmute.
Thank you very much, Adi, for giving the opportunity. Actually, I just want to express a deep appreciation to Mother VRAJALILA for this class, because she has made me shed some tears. I'm not going to open my screen because I was made to shed tears actually when he was answering Govinda Prabhu, because I was just remembering the last past tense of like Guru Day, and when he was saying that, at that moment when he was saying it can't be better than this, it can't be better than this. And I was just remembering that moment, that past tense, as she was speaking, because everything is about us. And it reflects outside based on our realizations and our internal situation. And when she was referencing Swayam Bhagwan Keshava Maharaj's principles, actually, these are Gurudev's principles, because I can remember it vividly how Gurudev has taught us all of this in a very unique way. And when we are compassionate to ourselves, we can then extend compassion to others. We can extend compassion when we ourselves are not even compassionate with ourselves. And most of the time, she ended it up, even while answering the last question, that most of the times is because we just focus on the external. We're thinking bhakti is about others, but bhakti is supposed to be about us. I can go on and on and on and say this. I just want to say thank you so much, Mother VRAJALILA. And I pray that Guru and Krishna will continue to enrich and empower you in such a dawn this evening. Thank you so much. This class is going to be one of my archive lectures. I'm going to listen to it over and over and over again. The last 30 minutes, what you said is so amazing. It's enough to take one back to God if one can reflect deeply about it. Thank you so much, Mother.
Prabhus, thank you guys. You guys have taken me and, made me feel worthwhile. You've given me you make me feel like I have some use, all of you. I thank you so very much. You don't know how important that is. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Mother Hare Krishna, what you said and Salika Prabhu is highlighting is
wait, so is this, I don't know who this was. Was this Srivas on the phone? On the Samsung? Was that Srivas, Prabhu?
I don't know.
Haribol? Somebody said, Prabhu, Haribol on the
Hare
phone?
Krishna, you may unmute.
They're in India. Prabhu is asking to leave, so I'm not sure. It looks like Srivas. Who is that? Is that Srivas, Prabhu?
Oh, yes, Srivas Prabhu.
My God. Oh my gosh.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, VRAJALILA Mataji,
Hare
thank
Krishna.
you so much.
Hare
Thank you so much. Beautiful class, very intense. I enjoyed every piece of the lecture. It's late for me. I'm in India right now. I'm in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
It's 12 p.m. But I'm compelled to drink the nectar from your lotus lips.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were here.
No, it's good. It's good.
I didn't realize.
It's
I
good.
would have turned over to you a long time ago.
Hare Krishna. It's good that I was concealed at the back of the phone so that I can hear the whole discussion. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for waiting for blessing the platform.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you very much. Thank you for encouraging me. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. You're representing Gurudev so nicely.
Yeah.
Gurudev. Haribol.
Actually, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu had shared one short, brief class that Gurudev gave on the Gurudev's platform, and I forwarded it to a couple of devotees. It's 6 minutes, and it talks about these things, how important it is to keep devotees together. And if devotees wouldn't mind, it is just 6 minutes. I would like to play it. The sound is not too clear, but it's still audible enough for us to hear. Okay.
Haribol Srivas Prabhu, if you have to go, we are.
Yes, if you have to go, you may leave. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
You don't have to wait. You probably have heard it, Prabhuji. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Grace. VRAJALILA Mataji ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Samavira Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
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 Srivas Maharaj Swami.
Jai.
Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you.
How do we balance? Because the philosophy emphasizes sense control, renunciation, yukta vairagya, but renunciation. So how do we balance sharing love, sharing affection, because sometimes the tendency is, well, emotions are Maya, children's are Maya, showing love and care is Maya. So how do we balance those types of interactions, and really show love?
It's Maya is only about, if it's about something that's outside of the Shastra. Vaishnavas have the greatest, most intense emotions of love and expression of concern and compassion. Krishna consciousness is actually the greatest sense gratification, in the sense that it's about purification of the senses, directing them to Rishikesh, to the supreme controller. And so if it is about in the alignment with the Shastra, seen through the eyes of the Shastra, if it is in connection with honoring the great sadhus, if it is in association with an offering to Guru, then that is to be done vigorously, enthusiastically, passionately in Krishna's service. But if it's about passionate connection with sense gratification, then that's Maya. See, often we have this mutually exclusive kind of mindset that spiritual life, is the opposite of material life. Material life is association and variegatedness, and its organization is this or that, and spiritual life is something totally different. That is just a matter of you meditate impersonally, or you involve yourself in such a way. No. It's that the real activities, vibrant activities, the genuine activities, are the spiritual activities. And see, with my discussion earlier, that a serious problem in our movement worldwide is that while we're looking at transcendence and anticipating transcendence, we are stuck too much in the mode of ignorance and passion. And so to move out of the mode of ignorance and passion, we have to be what? The mode of goodness has a lot to do with truthfulness, has to do with cleanliness, has to do with righteousness, has to do with compassion and selflessness. And so as we honor such things, then it makes it very natural for one to embrace transcendence. And as we do not honor, then while we keep our eyesight and goals toward the higher, we'll constantly stumble, fall, and do what we've been doing. Abusing children, divorcing, embezzling funds, big ego power trips, and all of this is passion and ignorance. And so if that's not changed, we can make many resolutions, we can build all kind of projects, we can make all kind of fundraising, we can do all types of things, and we will be have more failures than successes in the high level arranger, because Krishna consciousness is not just about things, but it's about people, and it's not even about people, it's about people in relationship to Krishna. And this is why, I'm pushing a lot of these things a lot, because I realize that if we don't come to the more goodness platform, we're going to have fall downs again and again and again and again, and more divorces, and it's crazy. One of the letters I was addressing yesterday is one child. I mean, this is heavy to say this, but we're all family here. One kid who's also joining the team to sue the movement, and this kid, the abuse that he went through, and the kid was living as a vagabond, homeless, eating out of garbage cans, thinking of committing suicide. Now, this kid was born in the movement. And to think that such things have happened in our movement, it is terrible. And we really have to address that. And so, I'm sending a letter to this kid trying to encourage him, not to sue the society. But at the same time, I also explained to him, we can make all kind of rules and regulations, we can have all kind of committees, and all, because the main thing he wants to know is, okay, now how can we guarantee this won't happen again? And I just very emphatically said this stuff will happen, and will happen in different ways, maybe not as bad as that, but if people don't change their consciousness, we can put so much money into establishing this institution, this committee, we can do this rule, this regular resolution, we can have all kind of policies, we put all kind of money in places, but if people don't get out of the mode of ignorance and passion, that they will still keep finding ways of doing some other ridiculous things. That's all a part of material nature. So it's serious a matter that it's a matter of consciousness. See, there's a certain type of consciousness that creates criminal mentality, certain type of consciousness causes one to batter his wife and call it, spiritual life, and she should be submissive while he's doing ridiculous things and beating her up. There's a certain type of consciousness that causes a person, to find fault and to blaspheme the Faunacarya. There's a certain type of consciousness does all that. Everything is a matter of consciousness. Certain type of consciousness is racism. Certain type of consciousness is Grihamedi-like. It's all about consciousness that then produces activity, produces the speech, and then produces the actions. If we change consciousness, then we change the thought, we change the speech, and we change the actions. So as wonderful Prabhupada called the movement International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Any last question?
Well, thank you all very much. Oh, Prabhuji is still here.
I have to hear Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
Wow. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj ki.
Yeah.
Jai. So he.
I don't think anybody has to make any comment on this, because if we make comment on it, we're not going to leave the whole of today. But it is straightforward. The simplest thing is we all should try. It's easier said than done. Talk is cheap. I can sit here and talk. It's very cheap. But it is important that we all try to change our consciousness. Change our consciousness to Krishna consciousness. Krishna should be in the center of everything. Otherwise, there's always going to be problems. Hare Krishna.
And one last thing, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj says, don't be duplicitous. Don't be duplicitous. That destroys our bhakti.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You may have to say a word before you go to bed. And when you do go to bed, please, before you close your eyes, please pray to the Lord for their mercies upon us here. We are in this part of the world where I think when Maharaj Parikshit was giving spaces for Maya to hide, he gave places like where we are to Maya. So Maya is here free of charge. Please, we need their mercy.
So close us with some words of love, Srivas Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, my dear mother VRAJALILA. Thank you for nourishing us this evening. We will pray to Krishna Balaram, Radha Shama Shindra Lalita Vishaka, Shishi Gauditai, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, to bless and empower everyone who is here in this class this evening to go inside, to go internal and improve our consciousness. That is very crucial. That is the sum and substance of this class. Thank you very much for this wonderful delivery material. I feel indebted. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Sergeant Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Srivas Manacharya, Maharaj, Swami.
Hare Krishna. Hare Snaguru Devi ki jai, Bhakti Siddhanta.
Jai. Oh, Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Thank you so much. Our grace, Mother Vadila Devi Dasi ki jai.
So, dear devotees, I think at this point we're going to ask all the devotees to kindly unmute, and then we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare
Hare